wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Moderator, Professor Wahyudi Kumorotomo, Honorable Reviewers, Professor Peter Hachinal, Miss Francesca Manenpi, Miss Amanda Besar LLM, Professor Amit Agrawal, and also Honorable UGM representatives, the Board of Professors, the Chairperson Board of Professor, Professor Muhammad Mahsum, and the Secretary, Professor Baikuni, who also the host of today's program. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to our online meeting for the launching of the book review addressing global issues with collective and concerted actions. And before we start the program, please make sure you turn off the audio and turn on the video using the virtual background of the program. And we would like to start the special event this evening with the singing of Indonesian National Anthem and Hymn Gadjah Mada. Next song, Hymn Gadjah Mada.
Bagi kami
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the launching book of Addressing Global Issues with Collective and Concerted Actions is held by the Board of Professors and now live streaming on YouTube Universitas Gadjah Mada. And we would like to ask the chairman of the Board of Professors of Universitas Gadjah Mada to deliver remarks. And please open the book launching program officially. Professor Muhammad Maksum, please. Professor Muhammad Maksum.
Sorry.
Time is yours to deliver the remarks and opening.
Terima kasih, Mbak Mara. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu, Salam. Selamat malam, Namo Buddhaya, dan salam kebajikan. Waras. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. First of all, I am very happy to inform you that this is the way of the adults. Those of the board of professors of the University of Gadjah Mada in celebrating the National Heroes Day of Indonesia, November 10, 2022. It is indeed a great honor to host this international review on our publication entitled Addressing Global Issues with Collective and Concerted Actions, published by the Board of Professors of the University of Gadjah Mada. Such a publication is containing trend settings from various academic points of views of the professor and corresponding resource person, writers, and networks under the coordination of the Board of Professors Gadjah Mada University. As our active participation in and in response to the conduct of the G20 high-level meeting in Bali, October-November 2022, wherein President Jokowi is presiding for the period of 2021-2020. Such meeting is conducted under the three flagships agenda of the 2021-2022 presidency of G20 meeting agenda, namely global health architecture, the second digital economic transformation, and the third sustainable energy transition. They are all being derived from the greatest global theme: recover together, recover stronger. In connection with this international review, on behalf of the Board of Professors, the University of Gadjah Mada, permit me to convey my highest appreciation and acknowledgement with thanks for the participation and availability of experts and global reviewers as our panelists in this discussion, namely Your Excellencies, Professor Peter Hasenal from the Trinity College, University of Toronto, Canada, Ms. Francesca Manenti, Director, Center of Studi Internazionali, Rome, Italy, Professor Amit Agrawal, Department of Mechanical Engineering, IIT, Bombay, India. And of course, Ms. Amanda Besar, LLM, Legal Analyst from the Coordinating Ministry for the Economy, the Republic of Indonesia. Your participations marks that this review substantially characterizes such publication as part of our international series. Special appreciation is also addressed to the moderator, Prof. Wahyudi Kumorotomo, and our host, Professor Muhammad Baikuni, the board secretary. Thanks a lot for very smart coordination and editing that make this publication possible in catching the time limit. The same appreciation and highest acknowledgement with thanks are also dedicated to the writers, all the writers, experts, and their teams that has been supporting this publication until the last minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks a lot for everybody. We are very proud of having the support of the university leaders, the board of trustees, of course, the academic senate, rector and vice rectors, as well as the members of the board of professors Gadjah University, and most certainly for your participation in joining this seminar on reviewing the publication of the Board of Professor UGM entitled Addressing Global Issues with Collective and Concerted Actions. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks a lot for everybody, and wallahu muwaffiq ila aqwamit thoriq. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Professor Maksum, for your remarks. And ladies and gentlemen, next program is review session. And without further ado, we would like to ask Professor Wahyudi Kumorotomo as moderator to deliver introduction, book editor, and to lead the book review session, including reflection for an hour and 15 minutes, or approximately 2 hours until 9 p.m.
All right. Thank you. I just would like to check first whether my voice can be heard appropriately.
Yeah, sir.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Well, first of all, good evening to all of you, and good afternoon probably for Professor Amit Agrawal in India. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me just very quickly give all of us the idea of what we have been writing so far, and also the publication of our book. Together, I edited all the chapters with Professor Muhammad Baikuni, who is now also attending this session. Let me just share the screen of some of the pointers that I would like to raise to give an idea on what we have already written in the book. Excuse me, is it showing now?
Okay.
Good. Thank you, Prof. Baikuni. Again, I would like to thank for all of you, especially Professor Amit Agrawal, Professor Peter Heinal, but unfortunately it was just yesterday I was informed by Professor Peter Heinal that he would not be able to join us because of health concern. He suggested to invite Professor John Curtin, also from the same faculty, the same university, University of Toronto in Canada, in Canada, but unfortunately, we haven't gotten a response from John Curtin either. So I hope that, well, of course, Professor Amit and also Miss Francesca of Italy, and also Miss Amanda will, of course, join us. Now, Miss Amanda is already here. And I think Miss Francesca Manonti is on her way. But anyway, let me just very quickly give us an idea about what has been written in this book. Again, as has been mentioned by Professor Maxum, that all the chapters in the book are written by researchers and professors in Gadjah Mada University. And we would like to present the book for, well, just give a perspective from Indonesian scholar about the agenda of the G20 forum that will be held very soon in Bali in 15 and 16 November, this incoming week. And we expect that the multidisciplinary approach is, of course, presented in the book. And we would like to, well, contribute to a more comprehensive understanding on what to be considered by the G20 country leaders. Of course, there have been, you know, well, really huge issues on whether or not the G20 leaders will be able to come to Bali next week. But of course, the agenda is still there, and we have the global agenda as, of course, the main issue also that is written in the book. And as has been also mentioned by the authorities, Indonesian authorities, about the G20 agenda, we will be having a kind of priority issues. And these three issues, global health architecture, digital transformation, and sustainable energy transitions, are, of course, becoming the main parts of the book. And well, of course, I have to admit that actually the preparation of the book is very much quick. We discussed the earlier version of the book in May, and we just wanted to make sure that the book would be timely published. And we are fortunate that just last week, we already have discussed the book and the content with authorities from the central governments, also diplomats, and also experts on this particular issue. Now, what we would like to argue is these three elements. First is the importance of equality, inclusiveness, and concerted actions for any global issues. Collective and concerted actions is very much important because what we learned, for example, from the global COVID-19 pandemic, and that is why, you know, we are also very much agreed on the theme that will be raised during the next week meeting in Bali: recover together, recover stronger. And this theme, I think it is also coloring all the articles that is written in the book. The G20 forum should not only result in informal agreements and communiques, but it should also be more pragmatic with real action. This is what we would like to argue as the second element of the argument. And of course, because most of the analysis in the chapters are based on the Indonesian experience, and also it represent typical developing economies. Of course, we are focused on the issues like how to, you know, make sure that the inclusiveness will be really will be really considered seriously among the delegates and also the policymakers who will be attending in the summit in Bali. And why we would like to invite all the experts from Italy, from Indonesia, of course, and also from India is because, as we know it, the leadership in or the presidency in G20 forum is formulated in such a way in which we are having a kind of triumvirates or troika, in which consecutively one country become the president, and then the next year another country, and the three countries will be working together. And as we know it, last year we had Italy as the president of the G20. This year we have Indonesia, and next year we will have India as our president for the G20. That is why we intentionally, invite experts from Italy, from Indonesia, currently in the presidency of the G20, and next year as we will be having India as the president of the G20, then we would like Indian representative. And in this case, I'm really happy that Professor Amit Agrawal has already been joining us in this session. Now about the contents, of course, if we have read the book, and of course, because it is a bit hastily prepared, there have been, probably still some typos, some inconsistency in here, there. But as we see, the first issue of global health architecture is written by four experts, but the chapter itself contains 4 chapters, starting from the global health architecture, global health system and the advancement of healthcare industry, drug discovery and development, global health financing architecture, and sustainable development goals. And these 4 chapters are written by our expert from medical science and also from pharmacology, Department of Pharmacology. The second part contains 7 chapters, ranging from the issue of digital economic transformation in the private sectors, in the public sectors, and all the consequences of the digital transformation that, of course, like or dislike, we will have to face it, whether we are in developing countries and, of course, in developed countries. And the global cooperation is really needed so that the issue of digital divide will not be really, becoming the pending agenda. And we hope that the 20 forum will be addressing such kind of issue. And the third part contains 8 chapters written by experts, especially those who have been conducting research on energy transitions. We have mechanical engineers, we have chemical engineers, and social and political scientists, and also legal experts who are working together on the issue of sustainable energy transition. And of course, again, most of the cases are based on Indonesian cases, and that is why it would be relevant for the delegates who are coming from developing countries. And let me just take a few more minutes for just showing you the idea of global health architecture. Let's say, for example, the fact that research and development funds from developed countries are widely available, but it is not easy to be channeled to developing countries. The fact that, let's say, for example, when we learn from the COVID-19 pandemic recently, had the vaccine was quickly distributed to all the countries, then we might not have so much, variants, so much new strains of the virus, Omicron, that was, firstly, found in South Africa, for example. And well, of course, the issue of inclusiveness of equality is also presented in some of the chapters on global health architecture. And second, on the issue of digital transformation, the issue of connectivity, the issue of digital skills and literacy are also presented. And with very much experience from Indonesia, we would like, of course, to argue that the problem of digital divide and also the issue of why is it, it's really difficult. Let's say, for example, when we talk again about how the global pandemic is not really easy to be handled, is because the flow of information and also the technology is still very much divided, while at the same time we are facing the same global issue of, let's say, for example, climate change. And we also represent, well, one of the chapter is also talking about the energy transition. Let's say, for example, while pointing to the case of Indonesian case, we have plenty of possibilities for using new and renewable source of energy, geothermal, biodiesel, biomass, mini hydro, wind energy, and also solar energy. But again, when we talk about how this can be really, really make possible for countries like Indonesia and also many developing countries, we are still lacking of commitment and also lacking of technology. And of course, the economic side of the energy transition is also very much to be considered when we talk about how developing countries would be contributing to, let's say, issue on the global climate change. And of course, the problem in typical developing countries, like what we have already seen also in Indonesia, is sometimes it's not whether or not the sources are available, like geothermal source of energy, but the problem is lack of commitment on the policymakers, and also lack of collective actions in which, let's say, for example, we might not really be ready to use electric vehicles because simply it is still too costly, and at the same time the ecosystem for the energy has not been really established appropriately. So that is why in the epilogue we come to the conclusion that again the global citizens should undertake collective actions. And what we mean by collective action is a deep awareness and genuine participation, and also all the individuals that have to be participating in preventing the worsened climate change, as we already now have been facing in the last few years. Concerted actions need, of course, multidisciplinary approach, and that is why we are presenting all the experts who have been writing this book from many discipline, engineers, social scientists, geographic science, and also, of course, social science. We have to learn to be cooperate and to collaborate. And from, let's say, for example, the issue of current pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, we also learned that we should involve people from various professions, not only from also the government, but we must also involve many other parts of the society, the think tanks, the religious leaders, and also the people at large. And of course, we are happy that in G20 forum, originally it is a kind of financial cooperation among countries, right? But we are happy that now in a Sherpa track, actually many elements of the society are also have been engaged in all the meetings in the sideline of course the G20 leaders. So of course, lastly, we would like to argue that concerted actions need, of course, solid agendas that are agreed by all the leaders and also all the citizens, that are focused on roles and shared resources to tackle issues at local, national, regional, and global levels. With that, I would like to end my presentation. And of course, we will be more than happy to listen from professors and also experts in this forum on the book and how we can actually work more, very much more better in the future in the publication and of course in relation to the agenda of the G20 meeting. Thank you so much, and back to you, Pak Baikuni or Prof. Baikuni or Bu.
Pak Wahyudi as moderator, then you can proceed to invite the speakers, please. I will give remark on at the end of this all the session.
All right. Thank you. Since Professor Peter Hainal would not be able to join, then Miss Francisca is already been here. I just want to check because a while ago, Miss Francisca told me from the via email that she will be a little bit late to join us. But anyway, if she's now here, then the time should be given to her. But if not, then we can proceed to the speaker. What do you think, Pak Baikuni?
Yeah, she is not coming yet, so please go to Indonesia and
Miss
Amanda.
Yeah. Amanda, time is yours.
Thank you, Prof. Can I share my screen here?
Yeah, sure.
I apologize for the background noise. I hope it's not too much. I hope my voice is still clear.
Okay.
Okay. So first of all, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Shalom. Om Swastiastu. Namo Buddhaya. Salam kebajikan. Good evening, everyone. It's an honor for me to speak here today to represent the Sherpa Secretariat. Allow me to thank the committee, the honorable professors for the invitation. And I hope that the G20 and especially the presidency will continue to have your support as we near the summit. It's going to be next week, so hope all goes well. We've noted the care that the committee and the authors have taken to ensure that all the G20 working group sectors are covered by the book. Now, I'm actually part of the drafters of the Leaders' Declaration, so the topics discussed in the book have been very informative to that end. Now, I understand that we are all familiar with this graph, that there is a crisis going on, multiple crises that the global community faces today. And so our aim for the presidency this year is to deliver a global economic recovery that is shared by all and will resolve the unbalanced conditions. Our G20 agenda for the Bali Summit will be guided by the spirit of recover together, recover stronger. Now, to recover stronger, we are asking G20 members to strengthen multilateralism and build more effective global partnerships. As a consensus-based forum, we encourage G20 members to work together to balance interests across the diverse membership. We have also reached agreements on supporting women and girls, youth, people with disabilities, and local communities. And to recover stronger, we are leading members to bring better and more resilient actions for a global action plan for sustainable and inclusive recovery. Now, every crisis has its opportunities for reformation and innovation. So we should ensure that this recovery moves us forwards and not backwards. So the framework of the presidency that we have set consists of 3 pillars. The first is global health architecture. The second is digital transformation. And the third is energy transition. Now, additionally, due to the dynamic of the global situation now, food security has also become an additional priority for the presidency to reflect the recent situation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, honorable members of the academia, I would like to talk to you about some of the key outcomes that the G20 has achieved to address each of these pillars, and it's correlated to the way that the book is currently organized. A few of the ideas in the articles, as I've read, have been reflected in the ongoing discussions and have been emphasized by the delegates for the purpose of the Leaders' Declaration. So let me start with health. Now, at this time when the COVID-19 disease first spread in 2020, governments all over the world were put in a difficult situation on how to respond. There is, on the one hand, the issue of preventing the spread of COVID-19 via lockdown. However, on the other hand, a significant portion of the population worked in the informal sector and might not be able to provide their basic needs if a full lockdown was instated. Now, Indonesia managed to retain our stability through the implementation of the National Economic Recovery Program, which amounts to 455.6 trillion rupiah, as well as installed appropriate mobility restriction measures called PPKM. But the shock to our global economy was such that Indonesia realized the urgency of financial aid to help the countries that are most impacted by the pandemic. So, this year, the health priority main agenda and priority issues are strengthening and reorganizing the global health architecture and governance post-pandemic by, first, building the global health system resilience, second, harmonizing global health protocols, and third, expanding the global manufacturing and research hubs for pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response. Now, the insights from the articles in this book have been interesting to read about. Equity in access to medicine has been a major concern for many G20 members, in addition to improving research and manufacturing hubs so that it can be built in developing countries. Now, realizing the costliness of reforming the global health architecture, the G20 has established the Financial Intermediary Fund, aimed at strengthening pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response. The fund has a total commitment of around $1.4 billion from donor countries, including Indonesia, and philanthropists. Now, moving on. The pandemic has ushered in a new era of digital transformation. And according to the Digital 2022 Global Overview Report by Data Reportal, the number of people who remain unconnected to the internet has dropped below 3 billion for the first time. But the digital divide remains a serious challenge. Technology is a double-edged sword, as it may widen the existing gaps between those with access to technology and those without. Now, to change this, the approaches that we must take include overhauling the way that data is governed, the way that digital communication and connectivity is done, and increasing digital literacy and skills. And I believe that this concern was also communicated in the articles on digital transformation in this book. Unemployment can also become a side effect to digital transformation. We believe that technology should be a tool that serves a purpose to support the development of people and not become the purpose in and of itself at the cost of the people. Thus, in our G20 presidency, the main agenda and key priority issues are transforming the post-pandemic global economic order to be stronger, inclusive, and collaborative through, first, leveraging digitalization by realizing a stronger post-COVID-19 recovery through digital connectivity. Second, improving digital skills and digital literacy. And third, facilitating discussion to foster data free flow with trust and cross-border data flows. Now, during the pandemic, the e-commerce and the MSME systems needed to be strengthened to ensure a wider reach to the public for the businesses. To support the growth of innovation and digital economy-based growth, the G20 is going to organize, among others, the G20 Digital Innovation Network. Now, this network is intended to facilitate cooperation between startups, venture capitals, corporations, and governments to support the development of innovation in various digital economy areas. Now, particularly healthcare, sustainable and renewable energy, education, digital literacy, financial inclusion, and supply chains. Now, moving on to sustainable and renewable energy. Energy transition is also an important pillar of this year's presidency. The main agenda and key priority issues are strengthening global sustainable energy systems and just, inclusive, affordable, and viable energy transitions by, first of all, securing accessibility of energy, second, scaling up smart and clean technologies, and third, advancing energy transition financing. Now, as we see in the news every day, different parts of the world experience very real effects of climate change like heat waves, floods, and droughts. Now, to mitigate these effects, the G20 is aiming to transform our energy infrastructure into one which corresponds to the need for concerted worldwide efforts, but also is conscious of the fact that many countries are at different stages of their development of energy transition. Having said that, research shows that if the Paris Agreement and net zero emissions is not achieved, the world is at risk of losing as much as 10% of its GDP, in which Asia has the greatest risk of losses. Thus, we are all in the G20 more mobilized to act more seriously than previously. The immediate target of our G20 presidency for energy transition is achieving agreement on acceleration of energy transition. And so we've come up with the Bali Compact, which we have delivered as a set of voluntary principles, putting energy security at the heart of accelerating clean energy transitions, and is tailored to be a short-term approach. And so we will be conducting the short-term approach, the midterm and long-term approaches all at the same time. But the Bali Compact is new and unique for its time because it focuses on short-term approaches. This could help achieve net zero emissions or carbon neutrality by 2060 or sooner. Now, the discussions in the book regarding the transition to renewable energy resources were actually very similar to the discussions that we've conducted in the forum as well, discussing the various aspects of it, such as the regulatory side, the economic side, the scientific side, and the government side. To conclude on my point, the impacts that we hope the G20 this year will have on economic recovery can be distilled into these 3 points. The first on strengthening multilateral cooperation. At this time when geopolitical tensions mean that maintaining dialogue is difficult, we hope that the G20 provides an avenue for informal dialogue to concentrate on resolving the impacts of the global crises that seriously affect millions of people around the world. Now, in strengthening cooperation, we also include strengthening domestic cooperation between different stakeholders, such as the academia, private sector, and so on and so forth. And it's important for the government, in order to create these policies, to have all of these inputs from the various stakeholders. Secondly, the action-oriented concrete deliverables. This is the innovation of the Indonesian presidency, because we do not want to only formulate narrative concepts. We want to emphasize concrete actions or deliverables that would give practical benefits for the world. Now, previously, G20 declarations have been quite elaborative and technical. And this year, we hope to reflect more action-oriented language into the declaration, keeping it succinct, to strengthen the message to the public that the G20 will take meaningful action to assuage their concerns. Now, these concrete deliverables are all part of the outcomes of each of the working groups. So I'm sure that some of your ideas as part of your work with working groups have also been incorporated as part of the concrete deliverables. And thirdly, the G20 is one of the forums to set the path for future policy. As you may be aware, the G20 is not a forum that creates legally binding obligations. But these political commitments are important because it creates the foundations upon which further action will be conducted. The presidency this year has had to navigate uncharted waters in fostering a harmonious environment. Having said that, with the support of stakeholders, including the esteemed scholars and academics here in the audience today, we hope that the actions that countries take will be able to provide solutions for the crises that the world faces today. We welcome the hard work and effort that has gone into researching the articles in this book and appreciate its usefulness beyond the G20, such as to determine government policies in relation to the subjects discussed in this book, which may be important for Indonesia moving on. And finally, we will put this book to good use as we are in the process of negotiating the Leaders' Declaration. So thank you very much for your hard work, professors, and thank you very much for your time today.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Amanda Besar of the Coordinating Ministry of Economic Affairs in Jakarta. Next, Professor Amit Agrawal.
Professor,
yes.
I'm very sorry that I have to leave soon because we're still in the process of creating the declaration. So
I know. Yeah, of course. Well, of course, you're working very hard. I know that all the agendas are there and all the delegates are coming into Indonesia. Thank you so much for attending.
Yes, we're anticipating that leaders will come next week and we'll have like a great leaders declaration they can agree to. Thank you for your ideas as well.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Amanda. Thank you.
Send regard to other college. Yeah, college.
Okay. Well, Professor Amit, now time is yours.
Okay, thank you. I will just start sharing my screen here. So I hope you can see these slides. I have prepared a few slides.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, it is showing now. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you, Professor Rotomo. It's really a pleasure to be here. And I can't thank you enough and the entire UGM team to have me here and ask me to give these comments on the book. So you asked me to essentially look at the sustainable energy transition. So I will essentially be talking about the comments which I have, or things which I have seen from the book, and of course try to add some comments from my country, India. And of course, a lot of these points are actually applicable to have a wider applicability, and therefore they are actually applicable to the entire world. So I'm a professor in mechanical engineering here, and also Dean of International Relations at IIT Bombay. And it's really a pleasure to be here. So let me start off by recalling the theme of the G20 meeting. I think this is a wonderful theme to have, to recover together and to recover stronger. Of course, this is in the context of the COVID pandemic. And what I really like is that it emphasizes the interdependency among countries and brings out the spirit of respect and togetherness in finding long-term solutions. I think these are very important points which this theme very rightly points out. And of course, as we have already heard and as we hear, this is for the book which has been written by the scholars from UGM, very appropriately titled as Addressing Global Issues with Collective and Concerted Actions and Indonesian Scholar Perspectives for the G20 Forum. So there is, I mean, if you look at the authors who have contributed, they have very different background, as was mentioned. There are people with mechanical engineering background, with chemical engineering background, with people, legal experts, and so on. So bringing everybody together and then piecing all the works that has been put together is actually a great thing, great job, which Professor Kimu Rutomo and Professor Bakuni have done it extremely well. And of course, I'm sure they are ably aided and supported by a whole team at UGM Indonesia. Of course, as we have seen that the book essentially looks at three verticals, three very important verticals on health, on digital transformation, and on energy. So I will be talking about the energy transition and the importance of equality, inclusiveness, and concerted actions for the global issues is what this book tends to bring out. So if we look at the energy transition, of course, I know there are a lot of scholars here, but just for those who are not really initiated in this topic, the idea of the energy transition is to move away from the fossil fuel dominated energy sources to something which is more environmentally friendly and more sustainable energy systems. This is a diagram which has been taken from the book. I will come to this figure in a minute, but this energy transition is very important because of the climate effect that the fossil fuel driven economy, energy sources have been, they have been harming the environment in a lot of different ways that has resulted in a change in the climate. And of course, the adverse effect of this climate change is what we are experiencing in a lot of different parts of the globe, whether it is through flooding, unusual amount of rain that has happened in certain regions, or certain places have not received enough rainfall and so on. So we have instances in our country where the deserts, which used to be deserts, are actually getting rain every year, a lot more than a lot of other places which are like in plains. And so, where the rainfall was much higher. So there have been a perceptible change in the amount of rainfall and the way the climate is behaving. And this is, of course, a lot of it is to do with our choice of fuel and how we have been using them in the last several decades and over a century and so on. So, of course, we would like to transition. This transition is a slow process. And of course, the points that I'm bringing in here are from the book. These are very nicely explained through the book. But of course, transition is a slow process. It involves multiple variables and involves multiple stakeholders. These stakeholders have varying levels of readiness, and that makes it this transition process even far more complicated. This transition is, of course, resource intensive. And of course, all said and done, urgent interventions are required so that this transition happens, and all these adverse effects that we are seeing on the climate is sort of mitigated. So the idea is that we pursue paths uh, which are more likely to drive down the energy and the energy emissions, the energy usage and the energy emissions, support emerging technologies which can be more competitive in the short run and have more very effective in the long run, limit investments in the oil and gas sector, phase out coal and fossil fuel subsidies so that usage of this coal reduces over a period of time, reserve CCS for economic countries or economies which are more heavily dependent on oil and gas so that they're not adversely affected, adapt market structure for the new energy era, and invest in a set of policies for resilience, inclusion, and quality protection of workers and communities, and ensure that all countries and regions have an opportunity to realize the benefits of the transition. So these are like some very interesting points that the book brings out. Of course, it sort of explains each of these points in a lot of details, of course, which we don't have the time to get into. And of course, if we follow all these things, the promise is that we will be able to limit the amount of temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius and less than that, hopefully less than that. And of course, that would have a lot of benefit, or at least not the adverse effect that we are seeing on the people and the health of the planet as a whole, and help to bring in prosperity back to the globe. So here I will just summarize. So as I said, that the book elaborates on each of these things. Here I will just summarize some of the very interesting takeaways from the book. Of course, there are a lot more, which I cannot talk about all of them here. But I mean, and of course, one can see how things are how energy transition is happening in Indonesia. And of course, then we will try to draw some parallels between Indonesia and India. So if you look at 2014, Indonesia ranked 6th among energy needs per capita among ASEAN countries. And currently there is a lot of use of fossil fuel. Around 89% is sourced from fossil fuel, whereas 11% comes from the renewable energy. And of course, there are a lot of strategies and actions which have been taken to phase out these fossil fuels and increase the component of renewable energy. So as you can see that the target is, or the plan is to, this is in the context of Indonesia, the target is to have 31% renewable energy resources by 2015. And if you look at the energy mix across the sector, again, there is a huge chapter and a lot of discussion on this energy mix. It's only been condensed to one bullet point here. But in 2030, the expected energy mix per sector is like 16% for business, 22% for industry, 6% for public, and 56% for household. So moving on, what is the incentive? So there is a clear sort of strategies to transit from fossil fuel-based energy or sources to something which is more renewable. And the incentives for transition are many. And these incentives are not limited to what is being done in Indonesia, but this is a more wider appeal. So there have been, these incentives include like sustainable financing or government interventions, which could include fiscal and non-fiscal incentives, carbon tax, cap and trade. And of course, there are other green bonds, etc., which can be all included here. And then there is other incentive is through the price intervention that can also happen. So again, there is a huge, a very good amount of discussion on how these incentives comes about and what is, what can be used, what are the options available, and so on. And of course, while all this transition happens, one has to worry about certain conflicting requirements. And again, the book brings out very nicely that one has to find a balance between the three core dimensions of energy, which are energy security, affordability, and environmental sustainability. And only if we can balance these, uh, one would expect a smooth transition from the current fossil fuel-based energy sources to more renewable and sustainable things. So again, this is the picture which has been taken, or a figure which has been taken from the book, which again very clearly brings out that for this transition to happen, we need to worry about 4 points, 4 A's: affordability, availability, acceptability, and accessibility. And what affordability means is that we have to worry about the investment cost, the production and the distribution cost. So this is about the costing. The other is on availability, which is what are the amount of existing energy sources, existing support system which is there, which will dictate how available these are, and we have to look at sources which are more readily available and maybe over a larger geography. So that's what this box talks about. Of course, we need to worry about the acceptability from the point of view whether they are environmentally friendly and whether people by large are ready to accept that. And finally, we can think about accessibility, which could be based on grid infrastructure or the network access. So, again, the readers are encouraged to go through these points, and there is a detailed discussion on that. So I will move on very quickly to the energy scenario in India. This is one can compare and contrast how things are, at least in two different countries, and hopefully that will give a better appreciation about how things are in the developing world and where we aspire to move in the next few decades. So the figure here, and it just so happened that there was a nice article in CNN which came out only yesterday, and I essentially used some of the data from the source. So this first figure gives us the various energy sources: renewable, oil, coal, gas, nuclear, and biofuels, and the composition of these various energy sources in the overall energy mix of the country is what has been shown here. And you can see how things are changing over a period of time, over almost 1 decade, going back to 2011 all the way to 2021. Of course, the energy demand is increasing over the years, other than this year 2020, because of the pandemic, because of the lockdown, the energy demand had reduced, but otherwise there is a steady growth. And good thing is that the renewable composition of that, the component of that, the percentage wise, it seems to grow, and the reduction maybe on oil. Of course, the overall requirement is growing. Maybe the percentage of renewables is also slightly increasing. And if one were to look at where India is in terms of use of renewable sources, this is a nice chart comparing against 5 key players: EU as a whole, China, US, and Russia, along with India. You can see that India is quite well placed in the use of renewables for the energy, for meeting the overall energy requirements. So, as per COP26, India had pledged that by 2030, the non-fossil fuel energy capacity is expected to increase to 500 gigawatts from something like 150 gigawatts last year. So this is a huge jump that we expect. And the other point that was made is that the renewable energy sources will comprise around 50% of the total energy needs by 2030. So these are reasonably stiff targets that the country has set for itself. And as I mentioned about the CNN article says that the country is on track to meet the non-fossil fuel target by increasing the share of nuclear energy and hydropower, as well as the solar and other energy sources. So here in the next slide, I will just talk about 2 of the energy sources, the solar and the hydrogen energy. And this is just to give you a glimpse of what is going on with respect to these two energy sources in the country, in India. So the solar power in India is a fast developing industry. Just to give you a sense of what is shown here, this is from the state of Rajasthan, which is the desert state of India. So this is a huge piece of land that India has, which is essentially desert. Of course, there is a lot of sun in there, and nothing really grows in there. So this land has been converted, or a lot of solar panels, which I hope that you can see from this slide, from this picture. You can see a huge array of solar panels have been fitted there, and they are the ones which are trapping the solar energy and converting that into electric power, electric energy. So you can see that the solar installed capacity is 48 gigawatts in last year, and it's expected to increase to 280 gigawatts by the end of this decade. Similarly, there's a possibility of achieving a high of almost close to 480 gigawatts of solar PV by 2047. So you can see that there is expected to be a steady, not just, I mean, a steady, but it's at a reasonably large pace of how the infrastructure for solar is being added in the country. And moving on to hydrogen, you can see that India is targeting production of 1 million tons of green hydrogen by year 2030. And currently, hydrogen is coming mostly from fossil fuel, but this is expected to change. And by 2050, the target is to have 3/4 of all hydrogen production is expected to be green. So these are some of the steps that have been taken in the country to change the energy mix, and hopefully that will make things more green as we go along. So I think that's where I would like to sort of end, and some passing comment. Of course, all these would require a lot of investments, government support, and again, these are points that have been elaborately discussed in the book. And I think there is a lot of opportunity in the current times for countries as they are looking for alternate energy sources to go green. Why go back to coal? Why not look at alternate sources? So that's why every sort of crisis, as they say, brings out new opportunities. And I think this is a good time for us to look for alternate green sources of energy. And finally, as was pointed out, India will be holding the presidency of the next G20. So the logo for the next G20 was unveiled by the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, yesterday. So this is the logo. Of course, the website, etc., also has been launched. And this is what our Prime Minister keeps talking about, that this entire Earth is actually one family, and we should look at it in a holistic way and help build each other, and which, of course, is also the theme of this current G20. So thank you again for this opportunity. I will stop here.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Amit Agrawal. And it is interesting that, of course, India will be ready for hosting G20 forum next year with a very interesting, theme: one Earth, one family, and one future. Very nice. All right. Well, next, I think Ms. Francesca Manenti of the Italy has already been join us. Good evening, Ms. Francesca Manenti.
Good evening. Thank you very much for your invitation.
Right. Okay, thank you. Now time is yours. We skip, the first session. We are waiting for you, but now time is for you. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me thank you for involving me in this very interesting event for the review of the book Addressing Global Issues with Collective and Concentrated Actions. It has been a really wonderful reading for me and a very informative reading for me, I have to say. Now I am the director of, currently I'm the director of CESI, Centers for International Studies, a private think tank in Italy. But for 10 years, I have been the senior analyst for Asia. And I am still very engaged in studying the relations between Europe and Asia, and especially the relations between EU and ASEAN. So for me, reading about not just the experience, but also the point of view of Indonesian scholars and experts regarding such interesting topics, and let me say global issues, so issues that can really interest both the two regions and single member states, was really informative. And so thank you once again for this opportunity. Just for going straight to my topic and having some comments on the book without taking too much time in order to let them the time for the discussions, I would like to just raise a few points that really interested me during the reading. The first one is I tried to have a sort of, let me say, comparative reading of the book that you proposed, that you just published, and the Italian experience, or what we have perceived as, let me say, public opinion during the Italian presidency of the G20 last year. So I would like just to start underline the differences in the title in itself of what has been chosen as keywords for the two presidency. During Italy presidency, we had people, planet, and prosperity. So the three P's that would, in Italian mind, represents a comprehensive approach toward a sustainable growth that would be growth for the people, the growth for the planet, so environmentally caring and sustaining growth, and prosperity, so common growth, all the countries going together toward one direction. And I was really interested in considering that also the Indonesian presidency had, let me say, some similar aims in mind when it chose the title Recover Together, Recover Stronger, just starting altogether the idea that multilateralism and multilateral cooperation is the key for having a real recovery of the world, of the international system, of all the societies all over the world. Other 2 points that I would like, just as the brief introduction before going into the 2 different pillars that interested me the most, was the stress that has been put in your book under the idea that there are truly important points to be raised and to be taken, that must be taken into consideration during or addressing such a complex phenomenon and event like the G20, is the importance of equality, inclusiveness, and concerted actions for really implementing global issues, underlining the idea that single countries or a single region by its own or their own can't really pursue effective strategies that can tackle phenomenon and issues that nowadays are more and more global, despite all the effects that we unfortunately experience because of the pandemic in the first place, and nowadays with the war in Ukraine in the second place. So just for going through really quickly about what I found particularly interesting in the book, I would like to focus the attention on the, let me say, 3 pillars, because as far as I understood, there were 3 pillars that was, let me say, emphasized in the publication, and that was the health, the recovery of the health system, let me say more in general, digitalization, and of course, energy transition. comparing and also taking into consideration the Italian experience of G20, I would really interested specifically in the two pillars, so health and digitalization. Why? Because I found in those chapters both common points compared to Italian experience, but also some, let me say, special novelties, a special approach that probably can be considered complementary, that can complete and be in synergies with what has been discussed last year. Just for starting with the first consideration on the pillar on health, I would like to share with you. I'm sorry for not having a PPT presentation. Unfortunately, the timing of the preparation of the book review didn't allow me to do so. So I would like just to share with you in the, I hope, proper way, the most proper way possible, that what has been the approach of the Italian presidency toward the topic of health. When it considered the health issues, first of all, the first consideration, the very strong consideration in the first place was the necessity. Of course, we are speaking of something that happened in 2021. So started in December 2020, but then happened in 2021. So the recovery of the pandemic of COVID-19 was absolutely, let me say, like a background or a general framework under which all the initiatives have been interpreted or shaped, a general framework that shaped then the discussion in all the task force and the topics that represented the discussion and the different tables for cooperation under the Italian presidency of G20. So when it comes to speak about health, there were some, let me say, results that Italian presidency underlined in the final events and the final stages of the G20. The first of all, the necessity of achieving universal health care and strengthening health system through a series of actions that was, of course, focusing the attention both on all the aspects that could be related to health. Let's say the necessity to apply digital technologies to the health system and the healthcare structures in order to transform healthcare delivery, public health improvement, and access to health services. In the second place, strengthening and protecting health workforce through education, through training, exchanges at national, transnational, and international level of challenges, but also best practices. And in the third place, improving healthcare quality, including prevention, patient safety, progress toward value-based healthcare and quality outcomes. The second point was improving health system means to tackle risk and vulnerabilities on other health-related sustainable development goals formalized by UN, so in all the goals that must be reached by 2030. So what was important in this part was to recognize that the impact that COVID-19 had on the health system also in one sense impacted, but also was feeded on other dimension of the sustainable development goals, such as food security, poverty and life outcomes, gender equality, absolutely important to be taken into consideration, which are the differences and how differently are the two genders or the genders affected when it comes to consider the recovery of the health and implementing strategy for recovering the health. Hygiene, water and sanitation, environment, and employment education, once again. So having a comprehensive approach to the topic of the health. The third pillar was strengthening global health security. So going to work internationally for trying to identify global threats that can be then have a national, let me say, aspects of the threat, but then can be solved just with taking into consideration that the dimension was indeed and absolutely at the end of an international and global scale and scope. Just for going a very very brief to the point, the approach proposed by Italy was to solve the dysfunctionality of health security system caused by lack of political will, informed by financial impact analysis to fund research needs, sustainable investments in preparedness, and previously identified priority gaps. So trying to have a more informed policy making toward health and toward strategy for improving the healthcare system that could direct and channels more efficiently also funds for development of the new era of a healthcare system. And that, of course, the recognition and the knowledge that an investment in the healthcare would have been crucial for investment and would have mean in investment in national economies all over the world. So if this has been the framework of the Italian approach to the presidency of G20, I was really interested in finding some common points in the book, so also an Indonesian perspective of this kind of issues. First of all, once again, the need that when we speak about health, we still have to take into consideration the effects caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. So even if nowadays there has been, different vaccinations and the impacts that the COVID produced and caused in the very first place has been transformed in the last 2 years. Still, it is important and crucial to address the problem of the effect and the pandemic cause for improving the healthcare systems. The second point in common is the knowledge of multilateralism as approach for ensuring that no one is left behind. It can be pursued a real strengthening and a real improvement of global health care and global health security system without having a multilateral approach, because no one can be left behind for really reach the final goal. The third point is to increase global health resilience. Consider the priority to strengthen global health architecture. And lastly, that when it comes to consider investment in financing strategies for reinforcing the global health or health system in general, must consider that these kind of investments are not just an investment in healthcare in itself, but also in building healthier societies. So, in some sense, incentivizing intersectional action in order to really face global issues. Considering the novelties that I found in the chapters related to the health, what really impressed me the most was something that probably was left behind or was not really framed in a very clear manner during the Italian presidency, and it was, for example, the issues of pharmaceutical manufacture development in developing countries. And so the need to reflect also not just on the public-private partnership in the field of healthcare, but also on how to create a system that could help developing countries in develop pharmaceutical manufacture that can address and can contribute to address such global issues. Once again, another very interesting point, maybe connected to this one, was the necessity of promoting multilateral trading system that includes raw materials, multilateral trading system for producing vaccines, diagnostic tools, medical equipment, and etc. That is something that is really interlinked, for example, to the idea to sustain and to promote not just international cooperation in the healthcare system in order to, financing a common initiative, but for example, also in activating a new initiative in the field of research and development. For manufacturing new drugs, for example, able to tackle the emerging of new disease, or for facing and so healing also diseases that are maybe not new, but that can really still affect the global context. The second topic that really I would like to focus the attention and to share the points, and then I will conclude because I'm taking too much time, is digitalization. Why? Because also in the Italian presidency of G20, digitalization has been a very strong and a very vocal topic that has been addressed from a different perspective. First of all, from just sharing with you some points of the Italian presidency, of what we experienced as a public opinion. Let me just recall a little bit the context under which we addressed the topic. The first point was that when we speak about digitalization, we need to take into consideration that digital transformation holds great opportunities for value creation and growth, but also it may rise also important challenges that can be encountered at the generation, diffusion, and development stage. The second point is that financial incentives alone are not sufficient for really implementing, let me say, a digital transformation that can effectively boost diffusion and development of digital technologies. But there is the necessity to complementary investments in human capital and skills. Without which there will not be a sustainable implementation of digitalization in overall sense. And the last, the creation of networks in an ecosystem that involves public and private actors, universities, large players, smaller firms, entrepreneurs, public institutions. All the ecosystem must go into the direction of digitalization. When it comes to share the Italian experience, what was really interesting was the differences or the consideration of two pillars. The first one was the digital economy. So implementing discussion on and about how digital technologies could transform the industrial sector, and in particular, how to further ease such processes for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, as well as taking into consideration that when it comes to speak about digital economy, we need also to take into consideration improved connectivity and social inclusion, as well as foster development of innovative solutions for smart cities, consumer protection, and child protection. So all the dimensions made really a digital transformation sustainable. Of course, when we spoke about digital and transformation, we need to consider the sustainable growth. So again, how this can be implemented in a sustainable way that is, of course, economic sustainability, but also human sustainability. So a digital transformation that is human-centered. It can be promote investments in digital technologies and the application of digital technologies to industrial and manufacturing process, but also that are investment toward research and development, training, education, and especially improving digital literacy among not just, let me say, the younger generation that probably are more literate to digital technology than us, but especially of workforce, in order to make all the people able to face the changes that will occur also in the labor market once the digital transformation will be implemented, or during the time in which the digital transformation will be implemented. And then, of course, when it speaks about digital economy, it's absolutely important to take into consideration the role of artificial intelligence, for example, for the development of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, the importance of enhancing measurement, practice, and impact of the digital economy in order for being sure that there will be an cooperation and exchange of experience in order to data and especially standards and procedures for collecting and measuring this kind of new fields and new issues, and of course everything that can be considered under the social sphere of a social dimension of digital transformation, let me say. So considering child protection, empowerment in digital environment, but also the transformation of the urban areas and the urban environments in which population is must live, and so this brings onto the table, under the table, also the topic of smart cities and how to adapt the communities in living in smart cities. So digital economy was one pillar. The second pillar was, of course, a digital government. That again was, let me say, subdivided or was considered under three dimensions. The first one, digital technologies for more efficient and effective public services. So how digitalization can impact the public services provided by the institutions to the population. Digital identity as a tool to access public services and foster social inclusion. So once again, a new interaction, digital technologies as enablers, but also shapers of the interaction between the public institutions and the population. And lastly, the flexible regulations to promote innovation and agile regulation. That is indeed the final call of the, let me say, government and public institutions. Once again, for underlying the points of common and the points of novelties that I found in the book and that really interested me, points of common that interested me the most has been how much also Indonesia paid attention to the role of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises when it comes to speak about digital economy. That was really, interesting, because sometimes when we speak about or we think about digital innovation and digital technologies, we usually think about big companies or multinational companies, but then how the implementation of if they are the provider of the technologies and the tools, how much this can impact not just the business, the big business, but also the backbones of the economical structures of countries all over the world. The second common point was the emphasis on smart cities. That is absolutely the future, probably, of the, let me say, environmental space in which the population in next year will have to live. And third, the third part in common is the knowledge that the approach that must be developed is a comprehensive approach in terms of quantity and quality of the digitalization process. So quantity and quality are two faces of the same coin in order to achieve a really sustainable digital innovation. Concerning the point of novelties that really interested me was, first of all, the consideration that when it comes to talk about digital innovation or digitalization, we have to take into consideration that among the G20 countries, but also in let me say, international communities, there are technological constraints, for example, like low-speed internet access, that can jeopardize the potential of development of digital economy in some countries, and so there can be a unique solution for all the countries, but the implementation of digitalization must be both a bottom-up but also a bottom-up approach in order to shape to the reality on the ground. Second point, the recognition of a specific role of a regional entity, for example, ASEAN. And once again, it was very interesting in reading the paper regarding not just Indonesia experience, but also, let me say, more regional experience, like a second level, a second step in taking into consideration which can be the entanglements and of solutions, but also the role of international cooperation, regional and then international cooperation in addressing this kind of issues. And the third point, the fact that digital transformation in governments need to learn a lot from similar efforts in the business world. So a sort of new approach or a different lens toward which to look at the interaction between let me say, the two pillars that the Italian presidency described as digital economy and digital government. So digital economy and digital government needs to be taken into consideration as 2 pages of the same book in order to be sure that there will be, lesson learned from one to each other, and especially that when it comes to digitalize the government can be able to implement the regulations and then can enable the process in digitalization of the institution itself, but also to create an enabling environment for the digitalization to be effective. I conclude here. I'm very sorry if I took too much time, but thank you very much again for involving me in this initiative.
Thank you, Ms. Francisca. Very comprehensive explanations about all the things in global issues, ranging from the health issues, of course, and digital transformation, and also on energy transition. But of course, she has already been focusing much on digitalization, the importance of developing human capital, public-private partnership, and also of course she appreciated the the focus on small and medium and enterprises for digital. So it's not necessarily always focusing on the big and large companies, but more interestingly is that she is also focused on the importance of collaboration, multilateral trading system, cooperation among countries, whether it is from developed countries and also from developing countries. And I just noticed also that last year in Italy, they had 3 P's: people, planet, and prosperity. This year we have double R, recover together, recover stronger. And next year we will have 3 O's: one earth, one family, one future. But something that is in common in this kind of tagline or catchword is that we really need we really need all the leaders about the importance of togetherness, especially because we are really facing the same common global problem, and that is the climate change. And we really have to work together on that. Thank you so much, Ms. Francisca. And I think now it is the time for us to Q&A sessions. We also have some writers of the book from, I think we have Professor Hermin, one of the writer. We have Professor Rahmawan Butiarto. We have some other, experts in this regard. Prof. Baikuni, do you have something to add?
I will give last remark. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
So in that talk, Zul Fikri also mentioned their opinion.
Okay. Okay. Just if for all the audiences, if you do have comments or questions to the speakers here, please just raise your hand, or you just open up the microphone But for the time being, because there is also one commentaries in the checkbox, some of which might be also relevant to the discussion. As already noted by Professor Baikuni, we had Mr. Zulkifli Soleman. He said, many constructive opinions and technically oriented recommendations are highly appreciated. However, all of these opinions and recommendations will finally depend on political considerations. The impacts of the Ukraine-Russian war will result in a kind of agree to disagree agreement among the leaders of the G20 countries. Can anyone tap on that question? I know that Ms. Francisca is really an expert on the global politics. Maybe if you can just comments on that question, please.
Absolutely. Thank you. Indeed, the war in Ukraine will have an inevitable role in shaping, let me say, the environment and the framework for discussions in the next years and months, but also years, I think, meaning that the war in Ukraine really and the Russian aggression against Ukraine has been like an historical moment in the last 50 years of international relations, and inevitably it will have an impact. But it will have an impact also because, as we mentioned before, when it comes to consider some global issues, for example, the recovery of the health system, we can't consider health system in itself, but it's really entangled and interrelated with other dimensions, for example, other sustainable development goals. Food security is one of that. And it's a matter of fact that the war in Ukraine really impacts also the food security all over the world. So it is not just an issue of political opportunity, but the war in Ukraine is and the effect that the, let me say, not short-term, but mid and long-term effect that the war in Ukraine will have at the international level inevitably will shape the framework of international cooperations, both the architecture, but of course also the topics that will be discussed in meetings or occasions, important occasions like the G21, for example. I don't think that we'll, let me just go through the question very quickly. I really hope that it will not just, an approach to agree or disagree when it comes to make an agreement among the leaders of G20 countries, but there will be, let me say, a more informative and pattern and path for coming to an agreement, meaning that it will be necessary to recognize that there is this kind of impact, but then the outcomes of the G20 will be for tackling global issues that are still, we have seen from the Italian presidency to the Indonesian one, that are still present in the current days.
All right. Thank you. Well, of course, unlike last year during the Italian presidency, in which, the global, at least, all of us were facing the COVID-19 last year, of course. But things now is getting better in some parts, but it's also getting worse. When we talk about, the rates of cases of COVID-19 contagion, we are also seeing some spike in Japan. Of course, in Indonesia, we are also facing a new, strain of virus called XBB. a lot more people are now being contaminated, but we hope, of course, that the effectiveness of the vaccination will be able to at least, put the mortality rate in a lower level. But anyway, we are, of course, facing really a huge battle against, the rift among the world leaders, as you mentioned, when we talk about Ukraine and Russia war. It is really has a serious impact, especially on the global food security, because these two countries are the main, producers of wheat, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, well, any other questions for the audiences? Please just open your mic. Or if you do have some additional information, we have, let's say, Professor Rahmawan Budiarto, an expert on the energy transition in Indonesia. If you may just comments on what has been explained by Professor Amit Agrawal a while ago, it would be very much appreciated. Dr. Rahmawan, are you with us? Okay. Seems that he's also in other line. Anyway, do you have any other comments from the audience?
Yeah, I will give some comment, Pak Wahyudi.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, it is quite interesting for Sri presenter and reviewing this book. Thank you very much. I will try to ask some question to Mr. Amit Agarwal. You are expert in technology, especially related to the engineering and energy. We have two countries among India, Indonesia, and Italy even. Geographically, we are archipelago country, and India is a continents country. And also the Italy, part of them is archipelagic country, and part of them is continental with Europe. In terms of energy, what kind of future energy in India and Italy related to, because India has a huge population, and also Indonesia as well. So what kind of the future energy for India and now in progress in research and development, and how the strategy for reaching the frontier, the area where the remote from the centers, and for Italy maybe related to the impact of the war between Russia and Ukraine. What is the impact for the economy in Europe or even in Italy itself? Please comment to my question. Thank you.
So thank
All right.
you. Actually,
Professor Amit.
yeah, thank you. This is actually a very interesting question. So, see, I mean, I would sort of say that I have tried to cover the importance of solar. Solar has been really like a big wave. Hydrogen is the other thing. There are other things that I know which people are working on. How much they will be successful, that we'll have to see how much technology development can happen, and whether the cost can be brought down is an issue. So here people are working on several like algae-based fuel and sort of using that route to generate, to generate power, or to convert the lipid content in these algae to oil or some such form that can be then combusted and converted into an energy source. So that is the type of another sort of a pipeline that people are working on. So the idea or the advantage of going with algae is that they can be even grown in seawater. So the land which is not arable, especially there are certain places where in the state of Gujarat, for example, there are some plants which are available where where there is a lot of seawater and one can grow this algae and use that. So there are companies, some big power, the industrial houses here are trying to move in that direction. So the good thing is that two of the major industrial houses are actually invested in finding clean energy sources. So I think that is really helping the country in trying to find alternate solutions and energy sources. So, I mean, I think these are some of the efforts, prominent efforts that I can highlight. Now, coming to the second question, I think that is far more tricky about the effect of the war. I think, of course, the war has really affected a lot of things: fuel, food, and fertilizer as the 3 Fs. And of course, the impact of that is being seen across the globe. And as was pointed out by the colleague from Italy, this would have long-term repercussions. So, I mean, we are just very worried about how things are going to be. I mean, I know there is a lot of dependence, for example, in Germany, on the oil or the pipeline which is coming from Russia. So I think the winter is setting in, and it's a tough time. So I hope that this energy crisis would be taken care of. I hope the war ends without causing more damage to people. But of course, that's a personal opinion. Of course, how does it? There are a lot more complicated issues, and I hope those will get resolved to everybody's satisfaction. Yeah. So yeah, and I think maybe the Italian professor can throw more light about how the war is affecting the things in Italy and maybe things in Europe in general.
Okay, thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
Ms. Francesca, do you have something to add about the energy impact on the European countries, the one that was raised by Dr. Baikuni?
Thank you very much. Of course, energy topic right now is absolutely crucial for Europe. After the outbreak of a war in Ukraine, European Union and European countries realized how much they have been exposed to dependency on energy supply from Russia, and of course it has been a critical factors in the last 9 months. That huge European countries to try to go for alternatives, and it has been implemented in different ways. The first one was to try to have and to find new suppliers, to energy suppliers, especially of gas. And we went in North Africa. We tried to reinforce partnership in the Gulf, and of course also in the Asia. And for example, for Italy, Azerbaijan is an important partner when it comes to consider the gas and the gas supply. But then I would like also to raise attention of some possible, let me say, repercussions of this dependency and this critical moment for European Union. And number one is that before the war in Ukraine, of course, you probably heard from the EU Green Deal. So European Union was trying to become one of the leading actors in the implementing energy transition toward the green energy. But then, of course, the war came, and there was the need to find urgently new sources for the energy in order to not to face a shortage in the autumn and in the winter. So a solution for a short-term problem that, in any case, have in some sense put aside or just frozen a little bit the implementation of the European Union Green Deal. And the second point is that European Union is starting also to consider the fact that we have been exposed to the dependency of from Russia for our energy supplies, so the so-called weaponization of energy resources. So the problem nowadays is to consider that when it comes to go for energy, green energy, we also need green technologies. But for building green technologies, we need raw materials, so-called critical raw materials, like rare earths. And again, of course, these kind of raw materials are not present all over the world, but they are concentrated in some part and in some countries, in some region. So, of course, the other problem is now for the European Union to try to implement a strategy or to work in advance for not finding itself in the next future again dependent on countries that for the supply chain of the technologies that are enabling of green energy from countries that effectively has this kind of critical raw materials. So it is indeed a very, very, let me say, interesting moment for the European Union when it comes to consider, the energy sector and the future of energy sector in the European Union. Because of course, the first choice will be to go green, but for really going green in a sustainable way, European Union will also need to face other challenges and to have a comprehensive approach to the energy security and resilience in the medium long term.
Okay, thank you. It is interesting that the energy issue is not only being considered by leaders in developing countries, but also in developed countries. We have already heard about the fact that, let's say, in India and especially in Indonesia, we are trying to move away from after oil has been depleted, and we would like to make a transition towards renewable energy. But now the demand for coal is raised because of the energy crisis. Of course, the demand for that is also coming from Europe and also other countries. So, of course, it needs really a lot of effort among decision makers in both developed and developing countries, so that we can, of course, address the issue of climate change, but at the same time, we really have to, consider the supply chain and all the things that are happening, issues on affordability, issues on economic feasibility when we talk about the energy transition. Thank you. Any other comments from the audience? Please just open your microphone if you would like to raise questions. Anybody? Okay. All right. If not, then of course it is almost 2 hours that we are online with in this forum. So I will just let Professor Baikuni to give some last remark representing probably the board of professors of Gadjah Mada University. Or if you do have anything to say, please, time is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Wahyudi. Thank you, Professor Amit Agarwal, Ms. Francisca Manenti, dan Ms. Amanda. Let me just give some short remark and reflection from this book. That the book is related to our discussion today. I hope you can see it's not PowerPoint, but related to the book itself. we, as editor, conclude that the G20 leadership and concerted action is very important for the future our planet. From Italy, we heard that three people, planet, and prosperity have been formulated, and we know that the triple bottom line is intensively and extensively have been implemented in the main arena of the development program, policy, and action. And we are facing the situation that we should recover together and recover stronger. That's after the Great Depression from the pandemic COVID, we have to come back again that we have an agenda for sustainable development goals from 2015 or start from yearly 2016 to 2030. There are so many commitments among all the world countries, and we should try to implement and renew the vision, because great pandemic COVID and the crisis, maybe next coming years will be economic crisis, because there are many problems with the war and climate change and other adaptation with the new condition from the economy as well as the social dynamics of its population of the country. And we have learned from the many meetings in the G20 Indonesian 2022 presidency. Here there are more than 350 meetings, so many even actor and sector try to communicate and create some resolution based on their own commitment and action. So we note that the Recover Together and Recover Stronger is called for solidarity and respect, togetherness, to find out the solution from the global pandemic and economic crisis. Lesson from the situation in each country has their own character. For example, the Indonesian geographical setting is the archipelago country with a huge population, and we should try to create a solution based on its dynamics and character of its islands. So we should have create an opportunity for local leaders to commit and to concerted action with the orchestration from the central government. This is the experience from Indonesia. We have also gotong royong, social solidarity, and it is very important as local wisdom, and each island, each community has their own character with the social cohesivity. Gotong royong is a mutual help, mutual benefit of the community with values of the respect, responsible, and redistribution, as well as solidarity to strengthening and sharing the resources for common goal solution. And we also noticed that G20 is a very important event for Indonesia to create many perspective and many practical action for Indonesian situation, that a lot of sector and actor participate in this kind of solution after pandemic and maybe coming crisis. lesson learned from the digital transformation in Indonesia. The last 2 decades, the digital access have spending over the archipelagic country. The first, we can reflect in the 1976, the first geostationary telecommunication satellite Palapa have been launched to facilitate the telecommunication to cover the archipelagic state of Indonesia. And now we have more infrastructure and connected with the digital technology, and it is transformed the society to more connected each other. The enthusiastic people, even in remote and frontier island, they have access to the internet and spend many hours to follow national news, global entertainment, and computer and smartphone. They use digital technology for economy. I think it is very important. Ms. Francisca Manenti responded how the Italy and also another word creating digital transformation for small and medium enterprise to support the small and the frontier society. It is very important to note that the digital divide also matters to discuss and to bring the solution because there are infrastructure and human resources, but also the new behavior of the people in communication and connection, and creating lack of the digital literacy will create backward region and backward community. So we have to also think about how the digital technology divides or unites our society. So this is very important to reflect, to bring new perspective as a practice and policy and program, how to connect it each other in the long distance, but also with the new behavior in proper way. Related to the word energy consumption, the last part of this book also mentioned the situation of modern industrialization and youth population number and massive consumption lifestyle of energy. And there are some gap between rich country consume more energy per capita compared to developing countries. So the G20 have to consider switching and shifting energy from fossil to renewable energy. We are in tropical area in Indonesia, have some various source of energy. So we have to think about to reduce the pollution and to mitigate the climate change. So that is important to synergize the energy, economy, and ecology should be integrated in the create policy intervention in more sustainable way. Last of the comment reflection of this book, we call the leadership for commitment and collaboration. It is very important, not only the top leader of the president or prime minister write down the commitment and communicate, but also the regional and subnational region, local leaders as well as community leaders have to work hand in hand to solve the problem at their own capacity. So this is the concerted action is very important that we should need a multidisciplinary approach and collaboration. We hope that Italy, Indonesia, and next India, we can communicate each other, make collaboration in the research, teaching, as well as the implementation for the next coming years partnership among the academician and research will be helpful for creating solution network, and also we can work together for the next coming event next year with India. And thank you also everybody participate in this event this night and this evening in India as well as afternoon in Italy. So once again, thank you very much for your participation as be part of the chair board of Professor Maksum, and I'm the secretary of the board. Once again, thanks, appreciate with your sharing opinion, sharing ideas, and we hope that next coming future we can collaborate more deeply. And welcome to Indonesia, Yogyakarta, for Professor Amit Agarwal and Ms. Francisca Manenti. We can work together, and we are welcome if you have some event or webinar or guest lecture. We have some professor with the various experience and expert and background. We will also welcome to support your program in Italy, India, and other country. So thank you very much for everybody. I close this very important discussion with Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much. Thank you, Pak Wahyudi.
Okay, thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Matur nuwun.
Terima kasih. Kalau ada lagunya ditunggu ya.
Izin Prof ini bahan Pak bisa di download.
Nanti bahkan bukunya bisa kita share karena
open access.
Kita akan buat ini sebagai open access supaya lebih bisa diakses oleh siapapun, karena saya kira penting untuk kita lanjutkan diskusi-diskusi ini maupun
Salam saya Pak, saya dulu bimbingan Bapak waktu tesis tentang CSR Komdet.
Oh iya Pak Muhtar Rahmat. Ya.
Siap.
Ya.
Tadi Pak Rahmawan saya panggil-panggil ternyata baru double screen ya.
Oh double screen ya.
Mohon maaf.
Yang
rapat
Mas Heru.
Ya, matur nuwun Pak Rahmawan. Oke.
Ada lagunya enggak ini? Tanah Airku.
Bu Prof Endang juga matur nuwun sudah hadir, Bu Hermin.
Oh Bu Hermin ya, matur nuwun. Mbak Suci Handayani, Mas Zulfikar. Iya, terima kasih. Ya, ini yang membuat jiwa kita tercerahkan. Tanah airku tak kulupakan. Makasih banget Mas Wahyudi, luar biasa.
Nggih, matur nuwun.
Ini Pak Wahyudi.
Ya.
terkenal selama hidupku. Biarpun saya pergi jauh, tidak akan hilang dari kalbu. Tanahku yang ku cintai, engkau ku hargai.
Yang memerah darah, yang memutih tulang, kerinduan untuk Indonesia tempatku berpulang. Sejati mengakar sejak saya lahir, semangat yang tak akan lekang hingga akhir. Indonesia hidup bernafas dalam geram tubuhku. Meski ke tanah seberang ku habisi waktu, tetap raga ini mengantar mimpi ibu pertiwi. Junjung naba baik, tinggi, tinggi.
Walaupun banyak negeri ku jalani, yang masyhur pernah dikata orang, tetapi kampung dan rumahku, di sanalah ku rasa senang. Tanahku tak ku lupakan, engkau ku banggakan.
Matur nuwun.
Matur, mohon pamit. Assalamualaikum.
Sun.
Pamit, matur nuwun.
Sehat selalu. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi.
Sehat selalu.
Sesuk rapat ya.
Rapat menapa malih, Prof?
Pansel.
Siap. Pansel ya.
Windang, Pak Catur.
Oke, kalih Bu Endang.
Nggih.
Pansel Award nih.
Nggih. Nah, anu kan pengurus sak ndodoki terus. Matur tadi malam gayeng.
Lah nggih.
Jadi kalau pengen menyederhanakan bahwa semuanya itu terpayungi atau tersentuh secara umum, ya, tetapi tidak mungkin satu-satu itu kita bahas. Misalkan komoditas, ya, yang yang menarik fenomena umumnya, public policy yang membeli, seperti kasus singkong itu, gitu. Kemudian
Ya, betul ya.
Importasi yang tidak mengindahkan kepentingan rakyat, tapi lebih mengindahkan 2024. Nah, hal-hal seperti itu, gitu, yang kita tidak berbicara beras, singkong, jagung, dan lain sebagainya, tapi yang kita angkat fenomena umumnya yang itu berlaku juga untuk komoditas-komoditas yang lain. Nah, Suci, saya ketemu. Kira-kira gitu.
Yeah.
Jadi ada
betul.
benang merahnya adalah di policy making yang harus dibenahi.
Betul. Kita perlu lebih banyak negarawan daripada politisi populis.
Daripada belantik import itu loh.
Ya, betul, itu yang membuat repot itu. Public policy jadi kacau balau. Ya, nanti kita bisa rembuk lagi, mudah-mudahan draftnya menyentuh yang paling mendasar nih kok, Prof. Matur nuwun, pamit rumiyin.
Kalau kita bisa
Terus nanti
public policy dalam hal trade policy itu, ya, monetary policy, fiscal policy, trade policy yang pro pangan domestik itu sudah luar biasa.
Ya.
Tidak watan warak untuk kesehatan polisinya itu sudah luar biasa.
Betul.
Ngaten nggih. Ya, selamat pamit.
Ya, matur nuwun, monggo neraken nggih.
Matur banget nggih. Sukses nggih.
Matur nuwun nggih.
Karena malam ya ada yang berhalangan, ada yang bisa gabung. Nggih.
Tapi sudah lumayan kok, ini tadi sudah gayeng kok.
Nggih, gayeng bagus.
40 lebih yang hadir.